there, you bunch of Muppets, this is Desidration, and I am putting out my video early this week because I wanted to review Joker, for those who aren't quite sure if they want to see it yet, as well as talk about the messages in it a little bit for those of you who already have, but that part will be at the very end, and I will warn you in advance to click off if you're only here for the review and don't want any spoilers. Let's go. So, right off the bat, I can confidently say that this was my movie of the year, which is an incredible turn of events because when it was first teased, I was very skeptical. So I'm a massive fan of the Joker and DC Comics in general, and I have been consistently disappointed by their execution both in comics and in their cinematic universe for almost a decade now. I went into this movie prepared to be extremely critical, and the fact that I was instead totally blown away definitely says something. So the only reason I even decided to give it a chance at all is actually because when the final trailer was released, it gave me very Killing Joke vibes. Struggling comedian down on his luck kind of thing. I thought, okay, well, maybe this has potential, or maybe they'll just ruin my favorite comic of all time for the second time since the animated Killing Joke they did a while back. But that wasn't what I got at all. And I'm not upset about it, but I'll get back to that. First, I want to talk about Mr. Tall, Dark, and Eyebrows, Mr. Joaquin Phoenix. And boy, what a performance. Now, some background on my Joker opinions here. Mark Hamill has always been my Joker, but as far as live action movies go, I really loved Heath Ledger's portrayal. I know, how gamer of me, but honestly, it was a refreshingly new take on the classic villain that just worked with the gritty world they built him in. They tried to do this again with Jared Leto's Joker, and I don't want to talk about that. With Joaquin Phoenix, however, we see yet another new iteration of the Joker, but this time with a sort of underpainting that harkens back to classic Joker, which I obviously loved. With this Joker, there's a much heavier focus on the mentally ill aspect of him, which in most iterations is exaggerated in a way that makes it almost a caricature of actual mental illness, which is fine for his character, because one of the reasons we love comics in the first place is that exaggeration we see all over the place. It makes characters more memorable, it takes us to a more fantastical realm that satiates our desire for escapism. It's not a bad thing by any means, but the Joker in this movie, he has trauma, he has mental illness, his psychological development is very, very real. You can tune into it from a psychoanalytical perspective and understand how he gets from point A to point B. His skewed perception of the world is heavily influenced by a mix of his psychological state, misunderstanding of social cues, the things that seem to be normalized in his eyes and the world around him, and Phoenix does a remarkable job with this, as well as the script and direction of the movie itself. There is a very large sense of unreliable narrator going on that kind of makes you tilt your head and go, wait, what? So it kind of gives you a tiny bit of insight into his headspace while still leaving room for you to draw your own conclusions and form your own opinions, which I really love. Not every film that uses the unreliable narrator thing does it well, but this was an absolutely flawless execution of it, in my opinion. And speaking of the more technical aspects, the pacing they give the film is impossible to ignore. So you get a sense of this slow, steady spiral into the darkness, and then when things snap, everything goes from 0 to 100 for the remainder of the film. It's like they took the first half of the film and spoon-fed cocaine into every available orifice possible. It's just insane. Once you have your first aha moment, hold on tight. It is all over the place from there on out. I should also mention that this is an extremely dark movie. It is not for kids, for those of you who seem to think that every comic book movie is kid-friendly. This is not that, okay? I was thinking about this movie for 2 days straight after seeing it. I had nightmares that night. Not for kids at all. Okay, now that that's out of the way, some quick final thoughts before I get into the analytical portion. Phoenix also looked great. He has the facial features and body type to really rock the look, and I really, really loved the choice of makeup and costuming they used for his iconic Joker appearance. The rest of the cast was also amazing, and I have no qualms about the acting, the writing, the directing, anything. And my rating? 5 out of 5 ghosties. Solid. My movie of the year. Great job, Busey. It's about time. Now, this movie also has some very interesting messages that need to be discussed, but will absolutely get mixed reception from people who love it because they agree, people who love it because they don't think it applies to them, people who hate it because they don't think it applies to them, and people who just don't get it at all. I'm gonna try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible for those who do want to tune into this part who haven't seen it yet, but if you considered discussing the messages of the film a bit spoilery, or would just like to figure out the messages for yourself without any preconceived notions, that's fine. Feel free to click off now, but don't forget to subscribe to me if you like what I do, and also maybe have a little crush on me, that's okay too. It's good for my self-esteem, and I have none, so thank you, secret admirer. Okay, I have given you more than enough time to click off at this point. I am talking about messages in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. So, as I said earlier, we can see the psychological pathway being walked by this Joker as the movie goes on. There is a method to his madness. Does this excuse anything he does? No. Does it make any of it okay? Absolutely not. But there is something to be said about the way a lot of society, I said it, society, there is something to be said about the way we handle certain types of people. And that's not okay either. I'm not saying we can't be angry or upset and act accordingly when these people lash out and the good end up suffering for the bad, but we have to be totally honest with ourselves. The current state of things, the current ways certain things are handled and certain things are advertised are absolutely breeding some bad juju. And in this way, Joker is very relevant, and it is making a very strong point. The overarching message is how society affects and responds to people with mental illness, and what the result in the most severe of cases can be. We have got very poor mental health care here in the US. That's no secret. Terrible insurance policies, doctors who care more about the money than the patients. We've got bullying and harassment, some of which gets excused and even sometimes applauded for reasons I will not go into in this video. There's isolation, the whole if you associate with this person, you are also bad mentality, which causes a lack of proper support system that could potentially aid in recovery. And we even have a very brief message in there about hypersexuality in society and how those who may develop differently than the average person can interpret that, resulting in a very unsettling view of women and perhaps children. And I'm sure there are men out there who have also been affected by this. Just because I've never seen it publicly talked about doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So we've got people with mental illness being affected by all of these things, and some of them lash out. Then we've got those who are relatively neurotypical, but are not at all blind to the state of things. They may not see everything, they may need to do a lot of inward reflection themselves, but they see some things, and those some things are enough to make them angry. In the movie, this is explored through classism. People getting away with things because of who they are. And we let this happen today. Things happen, we get mad, we get distracted, we forget about it. But what if we didn't forget about it? What if there was someone making headlines to remind us? Protesting would happen, I imagine. And some of us would go about it in a peaceful, civil way. Others would lash out. And whether or not that is okay to you probably depends on your opinion on the cause at hand. There are going to be people who like or dislike the messages in the movie for legitimate reasons, but I also expect there will be a lot of people who will look at it and go, but not me. Yes, you. I'd say 9 out of 10 people I talk to nowadays are miserable in some facet of their lives. They want something to change, but we have to realize it starts with us. We do not live in a vacuum, especially if we have a social media presence, and most of us do. Maybe you aren't part of the problem directly, but are you standing by when it happens? I know we live in a scary time where if certain people disagree with you or misunderstand what you're saying, your livelihood is on the line. Yes, that is scary, but that's the way things are gonna stay if we don't start talking about it. So here I am, talking about it. And that doesn't mean that I'm not a coward when it comes to other things. That doesn't mean I haven't been guilty of making mistakes in the past that I am now starting to realize were not how I should have handled things. That doesn't mean I don't have other things about myself currently that I need to work on. But if the idea that you should be critical of your very public behavior and lifestyle bothers you, I think that's something you should really think long and hard about. Now, before there is misunderstanding, there are 2 things I need to clarify. And if you've already hopped in the comments to try and gotcha me on either of those things before I've addressed them, poo-poo on you. I cannot help someone who doesn't want to be helped. But first of all, saying you should be critical of yourself does not mean I am at all for government regulation of certain things. Making things illegal is not going to stop people from doing them. Change needs to happen on a societal that level, and we are not addressing the dirt and grime of society by simply sweeping it under the rug. Inward reflection, mature discussion. Second, I do very much believe that there are some genuinely evil people out there, some of which are in positions in life that allow them to get away with the evil things they do, and these people should absolutely be reprimanded accordingly. But there is a big difference between bad people who do bad things because they think they are above the people they hurt, and unstable people who do bad things because they are in a questionable environment. Again, this does not excuse or justify any bad actions committed by any person, but we cannot keep lying to ourselves and saying, oh, I have no idea why this is happening, or it is only going to get worse from here. And that is, I believe, what the main message of Joker is. If you can put your biases aside, your pride, whatever else is preventing you from accepting what I'm saying right now, what this movie is saying, and just think about it for a little bit, just consider it, then I think even that would be progress in the right direction. Whew. Okay, this was a very serious topic for me. Next week, we'll be back to my regularly scheduled absurdity and deliciously cringe content. So remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you Muppets in the next video.